this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a PC-98 game, and that happens to be Mime Floating Dreams. So this game was released in 1995, and it was developed and published by Studio Twinkle. Yeah, Twinkle. It's one of those names that's just really fun to say. And it is a first-person dungeon crawling RPG, and surprisingly enough, this game actually got fan translated recently, and it was all thanks to Valley Bell and Saint Timmy. So a huge thank you to these two people for making this game playable in English. So now, let's get talking about the game's story. Thousands of years ago, there were 4 kingdoms that were based after the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and wind. And they brought balance to the world to make sure that everything was in order, but until one day, one of the goddesses decided to betray the other ones and then just screwed up everything, and then, yeah, the whole world went to shit. And 12,000 years later, it stars our main character, Eagle Windeed. Yeah, is that a windy enough name for you? Well anyways, every night, he has the same dream, and that dream is about having salvation for the human race. So because of this, he figured he might as well go adventure off into the tree dungeon and see what it's all about, and that's where the game begins. But before we move on, let's talk about some of the other characters that join your party, such as Tyr, who is a princess, and then there's Hanzo, obviously he's a ninja, and finally there's Adelika. Probably not said right, but then again, she literally says, "You can call me L if you want," so yeah, we'll just call her L. And she's a female warrior who got stuck inside a tree. So all 4 of these characters just adventure around together, going through all these different dungeons and helping out different people and their problems and all that kind of fun stuff, and yeah, no, that's pretty much the gist of the game's story. It's nothing super crazy for a fantasy adventure, it's pretty typical stuff, but the one thing that does make it somewhat interesting for me is that I do kind of like the way how certain things are written, where not only do I kind of like the way that the descriptions are done on certain things, but also I do feel like this game does have a pretty good sense of humor, but I'll get more into those a little bit later. So for now, let's talk about the gameplay. Now, like I said before, it is a dungeon crawling RPG where you just go through a maze, you clear out the map, and then there's random encounters with turn-based battles. And thankfully, the map is very easy to read, as it tells you where the event rooms are, and also where the stairs that go up and down are. But what's even more handier than this is the fact that you can save anywhere you want in this game. Which is so nice that a game like this allows you to do this, rather than relying on just having to save in a specific room on a floor. And trust me, you really are going to need those unlimited saves anywhere you want at the beginning of this game, but I'll talk more about why later. But as for the game's combat, it's a very simple turn-based RPG of the time, so no crazy gimmicks here. So you got physical attacks, magic attack, and flee. Well, I guess one funny gimmick that they added in here with the flee feature is that they give you different options to run away, and that is bolt away, back away, turn away, and handstand. Yeah, you can handstand your way out of a battle. That's not something I've seen in an RPG before, so hey, kudos. So all these different fleeing options have varying results depending on what you're fighting, but of course with the handstand feature, it's a lot more funnier for that if it fails, money will fall out of your pocket, and if it succeeds, sometimes enemies will actually give you money because they're just so impressed. Yeah, it's silly things like that that I kinda love. But I should also mention that you can also talk to the enemies before getting into a battle, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but when you do successfully talk to them, the monsters will give you some hints, like they'll tell you about what certain items do, or how to craft certain magic spells. So nah, it's not like Shin Megami Tensei where you gotta recruit them. Nah, they just give you hints and such. And let's talk about the magic crafting for a sec. So you can't get magic spells from leveling up. No, the only way you can get them is by going to a room on the 2nd floor of the tree maze, and once you're here, you'll see all the different runes that you collected, and you just gotta match up different combinations. I remember the first time I got here, I thought it was gonna be some big puzzle I had to do, and it was gonna be a real pain in the ass, but no, thankfully, it's just for magic crafting, which, at first, I did kinda struggle with, but then once I learned that all the enemies can actually tell you what the recipes are, then it's not too bad. And just like most other RPGs, there's your typical stuff, like there's random stores you can find and buy and sell stuff, there's an inn that you can regain your health, or you can do the naughty thing by skipping out of bed and going to the brothel, and yes, because this is a PC-98 game, you're probably expecting that this game was gonna have some adult content, and yes, it does, but thankfully, they are not mandatory for the game. This is all just side stuff that you can just do if you're, I don't know, a horny horn dog, I guess. So yes, whenever Eagle Windeed is done for the day, he can also do the dirty deed, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's really the only like major adult content that the game has, which like I said, can be avoided if that's not your thing. And another important thing I gotta bring up is that you can also go to a bar, and here you get to order food, because yes, this is a game that actually does have a hunger meter in the game. Yeah, so you do have to be careful with exploring too much, but thankfully, there are elevators on every floor, and once you get it unlocked to the first floor, the tree maze, then it gets a lot easier and not stressful at all. But it's still slightly annoying that you would have to go all the way to an elevator and then go to the first floor to get something to eat while you're trying to go through a maze. And as for the game's controls, it's just a mouse and a keyboard. Pretty simple stuff, I don't need to go over it. But the one thing I do like to bring up is the fact that your cursor is a little sword, which I think is awesome, because it kind of reminds me of back in the day when you get those custom cursors, or some games where the cursor would turn into a sword. I don't know, I just always love that kind of stuff. But anyways, now let's get moving on to the other things, like the graphics, and yes, probably no surprise if you've seen my content long enough, but yes, I love the way how this game looks. Some really nice, greatly detailed pixel artwork, which is just top tier in my opinion. I love the game's UI in the game, I think it just looks really good. The only complaint I would have is that I did wish the map was in the corner, but despite that though, I mean at least it looks really cool and stylish and it is still easy to figure out. And the character designs are really nice too, but not just the main characters, but even just the random side characters that you see very frequently are still really nicely looking. Like the ones you just talked to at the bar, yeah, you only see their face, but even just from this, they still look really cool and well detailed. And the monster designs in this game are just super crazy, and I love that. Like, there is just so much crazy, weird enemy variety in this game. Not on the same level as something like Desperia or anything, but you know, there's a lot of really cool and funny ones that are just so memorable to me. Like, for an example, and I won't go over all of them here, is that you got a PC-98 that has big, giant, googly eyes. Then there's this Humpty Dumpty looking guy who just has probably one of the most funniest expressions to me. I don't know, it just really makes me laugh. There's even coins with faces on them. And the last one that I will bring up, although this one isn't super weird, but, so you got this, like, really cool looking magician guy, but his name is
the Dark Magician!
Yeah, so that's kind of funny to look back on, given that this came out a year before the Yu-Gi-Oh manga. Yeah, so there's a good variety of different funny but also badass looking monsters you get to fight, and thankfully, they don't get recycled that often. I mean, there's a couple I noticed that did, but, you know, outside of those couple though, there is a lot of very unique ones. Also, the different mazes you get to go through are really cool looking as well. Like, the whole tree stage, yeah, it may look all, like, brown and stuff, but I think there's a lot of really cool details they made with, like, the roots and the trees. But probably my two favorite looking mazes would have to be the Fun Maze and the Ash Maze. So the Fun Maze happens to have a lot of weird, trippy colors and patterns all thrown together. I know a lot of people would say this is very tacky looking, but I don't know, for some reason, I kind of dig the look of this one. It's just so weirdly cool to me. But one thing about this dungeon that does make it very ominous is the fact that whenever you examine a wall in this dungeon, yes, you can examine the walls in this game. Sometimes a message will pop up saying that you can softly hear children laughing in the background. And I gotta say, if I was trapped in this maze while hearing children laughing, I'd probably shit myself. And the whole examining stuff does go back to what I was saying about how the game's writing with the descriptions are very well written to the point that they definitely do build an extra atmosphere on top of like the visuals and the music. And the Ash Maze is another one that's also very trippy to look at for that the entire thing is made out of checkerboards, and I tend to be a sucker for checkerboard patterns. But not only that, but it's also like chess themed for that a lot of the enemies that you fight here are all chess related, which I think is awesome. And it's one of the very few dungeons where your heads-up display will actually change color. It's kinda neat. So that's all I'm going to say about the dungeon designs in this game, is that I really love the themes in them, and they all look really good, and yes, like, even like the sewer looking one is even kind of cool and interesting, but I don't want to give away too much about everything, but yes, I really do love just about everything on how this game looks. And now, as for the game's music, the music in this game is just fantastic. In fact, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this game's music in one of my many different video game OST related topic videos. But hearing these songs play while in the game, yeah, it's still just amazing as ever. Lots of songs that are really badass sounding and stuff that really gets stuck in your head, and they really match the atmosphere with their settings very nicely. And in case you're wondering who the composer was, it was Hiroki Sano. Another really good soundtrack on PC-98 that he did was Possessioner. And weirdly enough, and this really took him by surprise, was that apparently he did do a couple songs in the game Blaster Master Zero and even Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. So it's pretty awesome that a guy that did some banging soundtracks on PC-98 managed to make a comeback in the modern era. So yeah, if there's anything I can easily recommend about this game, it's listening to the soundtrack. And now, if you want to go out and buy yourself a copy of this game, well, I couldn't find it, and honestly, not really surprised given that, you know, like, PC-98 games tend to be really hard to find. But like I always say, if this is a game you really want to play, you know what to do, and thankfully, it's been fan-translated. Though, speaking of the translation, the only thing I will have to say about it in terms of complaints is that the font that they used can sometimes make some letters a little hard to tell what they are. Like, I've noticed that some, like, N's, H's, and M's kind of look weird, so it looks a little odd. But despite that, though, everything else was very readable. So now, as my overall thoughts on Mime Floating Dreams, is that this is one of those games that I probably do like more than most people are gonna say about it. Because I won't lie, I actually found this game to be pretty addicting with the whole dungeon crawling, clearing out the map, and just shredding through a bunch of battles really quickly. Yeah, I didn't even mention that, yeah, whenever you go to battles in this game and you hold down the button, it fast forwards the game super freaking fast. And yeah, for that reason, I love that, because if this game happened to have a slow as shit battle system, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. So the fact that it even has that is definitely a game changer. But now you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean by you're gonna like this game more than most people? It seems like you didn't really complain that much. Well, that's because I haven't gotten into it yet, but yes, this game does have some flaws that I can definitely see turning off a lot of people, and I will get into them right now. So the first flaw I have to mention is that whenever you start the game, your character starts out with absolutely nothing, like no armor, no weapons, yeah, like this dude's like literally naked. But here's the thing that gets stupid with it, is that when other characters join your party, they also start off as naked too. Yeah, so when the ninja guy and L join your party, the cutscenes that plays shows them with a weapon, and then you check their equipment, and yes, nothing. So like, what the fuck happened? Like, did they just throw away the sword as they joined? So that means that whenever a character joins your party, you have to quickly get to a shop and just buy them as much shit as possible to protect themselves. Now that's not a huge flaw that totally ruins the game for me, but it's still just very questionable, and what the fuck, like why did they make it like that? But probably the biggest complaint I have with this game, and this is something that I know for a fact that a lot of people are going to struggle with this, is that the beginning part of this game is relentlessly hard. Like, no joke, the first enemy I ran into, it literally killed me in 2 hits, and I died. And because I didn't save, yeah, I had to, like, go through the whole, like, intro prologue thing all over again. Yeah, the beginning part is not balanced well at all, because being at level 1 and level 2, your character is not only really weak, and, you know, also doesn't have any weapons or anything, but also, he barely has any health, so it's really easy to die at level 1 and level 2. But once you level up to level 3, that's where the game actually starts to get easier, and I mean a lot easier. Because weirdly enough, once you get to level 3, I felt like the game was not that difficult until like the very end. So I know for a fact that there's a lot of people that first started playing this game, they died, and then they lost a lot of progress because they didn't save, and then they just stopped playing. And honestly, I don't blame them, because having a really early difficulty spike like that is not good. So that's kind of what I was referencing earlier on why I love the fact that this game you can save anywhere you want, because if you really want to survive the intro of this game, you have to literally save after every single battle, because if you don't, there is a chance that you might lose some progress if you die. and nobody wants that. So yeah, that's really my biggest complaint with this game. It's just the beginning is just way too hard. Because if it wasn't for that, then yeah, I would definitely recommend this game to way more people. Because once the game actually starts to get going and gets easier, it is a fairly solid dungeon crawler that is pretty fun to play through, at least for someone like myself who does enjoy that genre. Now obviously, yes, it's not like super amazing, groundbreaking, revolutionary bullshit kind of thing, but I do think it was pretty fun and intriguing to play through. Like every time I played it, I was always curious to see what more like crazy stuff they were gonna throw at you. And it also helps too that the graphical style and the music is just really awesome. And also, if it wasn't for the beginning part either, I would also say that I would like this game more than the other one that I reviewed years ago in my PC-98 randoms video. It was called Dungeon Walker, and that was a game I also kinda liked too. And lastly I'll mention is that yeah, the game's story is very average and nothing super great, but I do think that the game's comedy and the writing on certain parts are solid enough to at least be somewhat entertaining. So of knowing that, yeah, if you care about having like an amazing story, then yeah, this is not going to be the game for you, as this is clearly a more gameplay focused game, and I am perfectly okay with that. So yeah, overall, I do kinda like this game. I wouldn't say it's like a top favorite first-person dungeon crawling RPG, but I do think it does have its quirky stuff that I do kinda like about it. But I am well aware that I am probably being way too nice to this game for, like I said, that whole beginning part really is the worst part about it. But if you can survive that ordeal, I do think it is pretty decent. But it does make the game very hard to recommend to most people, especially for beginners that aren't really used to RPGs yet. So there you go. That's the game Mime on PC-98. So with that being said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.
Kentucky Fried Idiot.